Alright, in this video, I will be breaking down Saga Volume 3. Last volume, we ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger where Prince Robot IV was interrogating D. Oswald Heist, and Alana and Marco were secretly hiding upstairs in Oswald's home the entire time. So in this volume, we will see that confrontation go down. And we're also going to check back in on the Will, Gwendolyn, and Slave Girl and see their journey to eventually catch up with Alana and Marco. So let's dive into it. Saga Volume 3. Issue 13. Two tabloid journalists are working for a publication called The Hebdomadal. The Hebdomadal is more of a tabloid news outlet covering more sensational celebrity gossip type stories rather than more kind of hard news items. They are chasing a story on Marko and Alana. They learned that Marko and Alana, members of opposing sides in the war, may have married, which will be big news if they can break it. These two reporters are Upshur, the taller one with glasses, and Doff, the shorter one holding a camera. The two of them are also dating and in a homosexual relationship with one another. So not only are they partners in work, they are also partners in their personal life. They are both originally from a planet called Jetsam, which is an aquatic planet with underwater buildings. Jetsam is a planet not very friendly to the gay community. The two reporters have traveled to a Landfall Veterans Medical Center, where they are talking to a veteran that is now missing a hand. The veteran soldier battled Marko and Alana while on Cleve. His platoon was there under orders to kill them both. The soldier, frustrated, says, when he told the Army intelligence guys afterwards what he saw, a landfalling and a Mooney together, and they had a child with them, they just laughed in his face. They didn't believe him. He even went to the press, the real press, and they were no better. So he came to the tabloids. He came to Upshur and Doff, and both of them are very interested in this story. Now, previously in Volume 2, that volume ended with Prince Robot IV interrogating author D. Oswald Heist in his home on planet Quietus. Prince Robot was looking for Alana and Marko and wanted their location, and D. Oswald Heist was claiming he didn't see them. But of course, the twist was, Alana and Marko were in fact there, and they were hiding in Oswald's attic. Well, this volume kind of rewinds the story a bit, and we are now going to see how Alana and Marko got to meet D. Oswald Heist. So Alana and Marko with their daughter Hazel, and Marko's mother Clara, and the ghost that is bonded with Hazel named Isabel, all landed on Quietus for the first time. They are here to look for D. Oswald Heist, whose books inspired Marko and Alana to get together. They all wander around the planet. They walk through some sort of bone graveyard, where the bones reanimate due to something called bone bugs, and the bones start attacking them. Clara, she gets bit in the face by one of the bone skulls and starts bleeding. They all start fighting back against the skeletons. Eventually, they are saved by D. Oswald Heist, who shoots one of the bone monsters dead. Last volume, D. Oswald Heist was claiming to Prince Robot that his gun didn't work. Well, clearly here we see it does. When we see D. Oswald Heist here, he is not the professional-seeming author that Alana and Marko expected. He's a drunk in a bathrobe in his underwear, and he is slurring his words and he is swearing. And he asks if these stupid people are here to take back his advance on his latest book. Over to the Will, Gwendolyn, and Slave Girl. The Will's ship took tons of damage last volume when they were attacked by the Time Suck monster. Well, they have now crash landed on a random planet and they are waiting for the Will's ship to get repaired, which will require some repairmen to travel to them. The planet they crash-landed on is very beautiful, at least. The Will and Gwendolyn argue about where they should go now, and how they will find Marko and Alana, and whose fault the damage to the Will's ship is. Later on at night, the Will dreams of seeing his dead friend, the Stalk. The Stalk tells the Will to just forget about Alana and Marko and just settle down on this planet with that Gwendolyn chick and maybe adopt Slave Girl, and maybe give the poor girl a real name. The Will argues with the Stalk, but the Stalk tells the Will it's clear there is some sort of sexual tension between the Will and Gwendolyn, and that he should just get on with it already. The Will starts yelling at the Stalk, but of course, she's not there. The Will is just imagining this. He is then interrupted by Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn asks the Will, "Why the hell are you yelling?" The Will answers, "I don't know." Gwendolyn tells him that he woke up Slave Girl. The Will tells Gwendolyn that's not her name. From now on, we're calling her Sophie. So up to this point in the story, Slave Girl did not have a name. She was just referred to as Slave Girl. Well, the Will finally decides to give her a name. He gives her the name Sophie, which we will learn the significance of that name to the Will later on in the story. The Will, he does not want to be calling Slave Girl anymore, so Sophie it is. Issue 14. The journalist Upshur and Doff arrive to visit a Landfallian woman named Even. Even is actually Alana's stepmom. Alana's father, Rustic, legally separated from Alana's mom and eventually married Even. Even is much younger than Rustic, and judging by this wedding photo with angsty Alana in the background, we can assume that Alana was not that into the idea of her dad marrying someone that is almost the same age as she is. A few months after their marriage, Alana joined the armed forces to get away from them both. Even does not seem like an evil stepmom or anything, she just seems a little ditzy. Upshur and Doff ask Even if she thinks Alana may have defected to Wreath. Even gets a little angry and asks, "Is that some kind of joke? Our girl may have had her problems, but Alana isn't a turncoat. She is a good person, and we're all praying for her safe return." Back on Quietus, Marko and Alana are talking with D. Oswald Heist. When he finds out that Marko is from Wreath and Alana is from Landfall, and they had a baby together, he snaps out of his drunken stupor and excitedly says, "A nighttime smoke. You read my book. You got the message." Marko presents Oswald their baby Hazel, and Oswald holds the baby and is moved that his book had such an impact on them. He then looks deeply into Hazel's eyes, and then he vomits all over her because he is really drunk and couldn't control himself. He apologizes profusely and gives Hazel back to Alana. He then offers them hospitality in his home. He also tells them they can wash their clothes. Back over to the Will and Gwendolyn. The Will is showing Gwendolyn how to use his lance weapon, and they are killing some sort of floating sharks that are levitating on the planet in the air. Gwendolyn successfully takes one of the sharks down. Slave Girl, she offers to cook up the shark for all of them. She says, "I know how to cook lots of things. All slave girls do." The Will tells her, "We told you, you're not a slave girl anymore. Your name is now Sophie. You like that name, don't you?" Slave Girl replies, or I guess, Sophie now. She replies, "I like any name that pleases you, the Will." Sophie, she heads back to the ship with Lion Cat to try and cook that shark. Meanwhile, the Will and Gwendolyn talk some more. The Will says he offered a reward for tips about a wooden rocket ship. Hopefully, he will be able to get some leads on where Alana and Marko are headed through this. The Will, he tells Gwendolyn, though, that he isn't coming with her. He's retiring. He's done with all this freelancer work. He likes the look of the land here, and he thinks maybe he'll just live off of it. Gwendolyn asks, what about his revenge on Prince Robot for murdering his girlfriend? Doesn't he want to still do that? The will says that he had an epiphany, and he doesn't really care anymore. The will then imagines the stalk, once again, talking to him. She talks him into trying to kiss Gwendolyn. The will is hesitant. He doesn't know if he wants to go through with this, but the stalk is telling him, trust me, she totally wants it. So the will kisses her, and Gwendolyn at first seems somewhat into it, until all of a sudden she isn't, and she punches the will in the face. She tells him, next time you touch me without asking, I punch your goddamn heart out. Gwendolyn storms off, but the stalk whispers in the will's ear, she said without asking. So, that kind of implies that she would be down for kissing him again if he asked, maybe. That's one read on the situation anyway. Back on Quietus, D. Oswald Heist shows Marko, Alana, and the others into his home. He lives in the lighthouse on Quietus. His house is filled with many books and outlines for future novels. Marko, he reads a little bit about Oswald's current book he is working on. The book is called The Opposite of War. Marko comments his assumption that Oswald is referring to peace. Oswald says that peace isn't the opposite of war. Marko asks, well then what is? But Alana, she wants to avoid spoilers on the book, so she tells them, no, stop talking. Oswald, he is preparing something for Clara to cure the infection she might have from the bite on her from the skeleton that bit her earlier. Clara, she is a tough woman, and she says, please, this is nothing. I still have a piece of shrapnel in my ass from the Battle of Cartwright. Oswald asks her, Cartwright? He's familiar with that battle. Oswald says his first wife died there. She was killed by Wreath soldiers. She was just a lowly street musician. Clara tells Marko and Alana to excuse them. The grown-ups need to speak in private. Clara and Oswald talk alone. The two discuss how the war between Landfall and Wreath has affected them both. Oswald explains how his son died as well, much later on in life. They bond over the various people they have lost. Clara says, I see. Oswald replies, they say it's the worst pain imaginable, losing a child, but that wasn't my experience. Don't get me wrong, my son's death just about destroyed me, but if I'm being honest, nothing will ever hurt quite so deeply as the moment I heard the first person I ever really loved was gone, referring to his first wife. He then says to Clara, but I don't need to tell you that, do I? Oswald could tell Clara lost her love bar recently. He could just read it on her face. He tells her, for what it's worth, Marko will probably get over his father's death with time. And maybe you will too, but if your spouse was anything like mine, I regret to inform you that the rest of your days will be, by and large, kind of shit. Clara asks for a drink, and the two of them share some hard liquor. We can already see Clara and Oswald are bonding a bit, and may even form a kind of romantic relationship. Some narration, which is supposed to be Hazel, telling us, the reader, the story much later on in her life. The narration from future Hazel says, Granny would never love anyone the way she loved my grandfather, but that doesn't mean she never loved again. Back over to the Will and Gwendolyn. They argue some more about the Will wanting to retire. The Will says once the repair guys fix his ship, Gwendolyn is free to hitch a ride with them and continue on her mission. At that moment, one of the Will's informants phones him. The informant didn't spot the wooden rocket ship that belonged to Marko and Alana, but he did find the Stock's Dragon Skull spaceship. That is the ship that Prince Robot confiscated. The informant says it's being refueled right now. The guy refueling it is Prince Robot, and the robot was asking for directions to Quietus. This is a pretty good lead for the Will and Gwendolyn. They now roughly know where Prince Robot is going, and Prince Robot is on the trail of Alana and Marko, so he might be onto something. Issue 15. Journalists Upshur and Doff arrive at the site of a war zone to talk with Countess Robot X. Countess Robot X was Alana's commanding officer during the war. Countess Robot X tells the story of why she transferred Alana away for disciplinary reasons. The two of them served together on the planet Mota. It was heavily occupied by Wreath forces. At the time, Alana was working on Countess Robot X's Vaughan tank. The team had been called in to rescue a coalition platoon trapped on an island with only one suspension bridge as an exit. Their mission was to destroy the bridge before the enemy could make it across and slaughter their own troops. The Vaughan tank's bomber had been killed by some enchanted shrapnel from Wreath soldiers, so Countess Robot X ordered Alana to man the station and release the bombs. Alana initially refused. She argued, "The bridge is crowded with too many Mota commuters," basically innocent civilians not on one side of the war or the other. Countess Robot X argued back, "Any military-aged civilian not actively resisting the Moonies, or Wreath, is a clean target." Alana eventually dropped the bombs with a direct hit and sent hundreds of vehicles on the bridge into the water. She killed many of what some could argue were innocent people. Countess Robot X afterwards transferred Alana to the planet Cleve as punishment. Not because she didn't follow orders, because she did, eventually, but because she hesitated to follow orders. Back on planet Quietus, Clara, Oswald, and Marko are all playing a Wreath board game called None Tooge None, which translates to now means now. They seem like they're having a lot of fun playing this game. The round they are currently on resembles what we would recognize as Pictionary. Clara, she drew a picture of some sort of celebrity, and Oswald is guessing that the picture is some kind of tropical storm? Marko is dying of laughter at how terrible they are doing. Alana then joins them and asks about the game. Oswald, he says that it's high art, and it is the greatest board game in the universe. Alana asks how Oswald even knows of a Wreath board game. Oswald points to a painting on the wall in his home of his second wife, Yuma. He explains that Yuma learned to play the game on Gardenia, and then she taught me. Alana is interested in joining the game as well, but she says she's a bad artist. Clara rolls up her sleeves and says, "That's alright. Visual round's over. Next, we wrestle." I don't know what kind of game goes from Pictionary to wrestling, but sounds intriguing. Back on the planet where the Will, Gwendolyn, and Sophie are, the repairmen have fixed the Will's ship. The repairmen then head off planet back to their home base. Gwendolyn questions the Will again on his stance on retiring. The Will tells Gwendolyn that he's changed his mind since they last talked. He is going to at least see this mission through to the end. Finish what we started. They all get ready to leave, but now Sophie is missing. They begin searching the planet to look for her. Back over to Quietus. Clara and Alana are arm wrestling, part of the Noon Tooge Noon game they are playing. Alana wins the arm wrestling match against Clara. Clara respects Alana beating her and not holding back, and Alana respects her mother-in-law for being so strong. The last round of Nana Tunjun is called the Psych-Out round, and whoever wins that round wins the game. Before they play that, though, they all take a little break. They all drink and talk. Alana compliments Clara and says, "Seriously, you're a beast. How do you stay in such amazing shape?" Clara answers, "Not by folding other people's underpants all day, that's for sure." Alana says, "What's that supposed to mean?" And Clara replies, "It means I always tried to be Marko's role model instead of his personal maid. Ever since we arrived here, you've delighted in playing domestic goddess, but a new mother's place is in the workforce, where she can provide for her people. The people of Wreath have a much more forward-thinking, progressive belief about women's role in society than we do on Earth. On Wreath, women are expected to work and support their family that way, whereas on Earth, often women are pressured to put their children ahead of their career. Alana, hearing this from her mother-in-law, says, "Okay, that is surprisingly progressive and totally offensive. What gives you the right to tell me what kind of mom I'm supposed to be?" Marko, he rolls his eyes and says, "This again? Can we just finish the game, please?" D. Oswald Heist, he jumps in and brings up the reality, though, that Alana and Marko and their baby can't stay in his home forever. Landfall soldiers may stop by for a surprise inspection at any time. Sooner or later, they will all have to get moving, and that won't be cheap. They're gonna need money and some kind of work to get that money. Alana, she doesn't want to work. The Tree rocket ship provides them food and shelter, so they're kind of set. Marko thinks his mom and Oswald have a point, though. They may be on the run and be fugitives, but they're going to need to work and they're going to need money, and they're going to have to try to give Hazel some sort of normal semblance of a life. Alana, she storms off, and Marko storms off after her to talk with her in private. Marko and Alana, now outside of the lighthouse, discuss what they are going to do once they leave this planet. Where will they go? How will they make a living? How will they provide for Hazel? Alana doesn't want to have some office job, and Marko argues, the two of us don't have to become office drones or mercenaries to take care of our girl. Maybe we can help make something. Alana says, like what? I'm dishonorably discharged. I'm a screw-up with zero marketable skills. Anything I've tried to ever make has turned out like complete shit. Marko says, not Hazel. Alana replies, great. So now you want to monetize my uterus? Marko explains, I'm just saying. You and I are pretty good collaborators. We'll find a way to balance work and family, and whatever else comes our way. Inside the lighthouse, Clara and Oswald, from up above, are watching Marko and Alana talk down below. Clara asks Oswald, well, they are fugitives. It's not like I can just watch after Hazel while Alana fills out applications for waitressing work. How are they supposed to pound the pavement when they can't even be seen in public? Oswald has an idea, though. There are some industries out there where Landfall and Wreath don't have their claws in. We'll return back to them later. The Will is looking for Sophie on the planet they were on. He still can't find her. The Will, he then receives a phone call from the repair crew that just left him recently after fixing up his ship. Apparently, the fruit on the planet they are on is toxic, and it causes you to hallucinate. It has some sort of parasite in the fruit that alters brain chemistry and tricks the host that eats the food into joining its new ecosystem. The repairmen that returned to their home office, they all went temporarily crazy when they got back. So the repair company warns the Will that he or anyone on his crew that ate any of the local cuisine are gonna want to purge completely, meaning throw up any food they ate. At that moment, we see Sophie, or slave girl. She ate some of the local fruit. The fruit is just dripping from her mouth, and she is hallucinating and all crazy right now. She stabs the Will in his neck with a small knife, and the Will goes down, and he is bleeding profusely, and Sophie is just standing there dazed. Issue 16. On Landfall, journalists Upshur and Doff arrive to speak with Special Agent Gale at his home. Special Agent Gale has returned from working out at his building and is wearing workout clothes. The journalists show Gale a picture of Alana wearing a Wreath wedding ring. Once Gale sees the picture, he ushers them quickly inside his home. Gale, lying, comes up with a story that Alana is secretly a Landfall spy and is in deep undercover work, so the journalist shouldn't write a story on it. Upshur and Duff don't really believe it, though. Gale says he can't force them not to write the story, but he urges them not to, and then he sends them on their way. As soon as they leave, Special Agent Gale phones up Irving, the freelance agent, and he wants to order a rush job. Gale wants the journalists, Upshur and Duff, eliminated, killed. Irving tells him, look, journalists are off limits. Gale says whatever to Irving's objections. He's willing to pay super rate for it. Just put your best man on it. Irving only has one freelancer available, someone named The Brand. Back on Quietus, D. Oswald Heist tells stories about his ex-wife Yuma joining something called the Open Circuit. He plants the scene in Marko and Alana's heads that this Open Circuit is something maybe Alana could do for work. He could connect them with his ex-wife Yuma, who can get Alana her start. What is the Open Circuit? So the Open Circuit is a TV company which operates on the neutral planet of Gardania. Gardania is not affiliated with either Landfall or Wreath, so it may be somewhat safe for Alana and Marko to go there. The Open Circuit employs approximately half of Gardania's population. Various television shows are created on set and watched by a live audience, some of which are very critical of the performers in the show. Viewers can watch the Open Circuit by wearing these type of virtual reality helmets, which kind of transport them to a type of live stage where they can watch the show like they were there in person. The viewers can even heckle the performers. The performers wear elaborate costumes and can easily mask their appearance. Alana, she always wanted to be an actress, and this could maybe be her and Marko's way to make money and support their family, but live a little bit off the radars of Landfall and Wreath. Alana could perform but have her appearance masked, as a lot of the performers on this Open Circuit hide their real appearance under their costumes. And while Alana is working, Marko can stay at home with Hazel and be a stay-at-home dad. Alana and Marko go somewhere else in Oswald's home to discuss this some more. They go and watch some of the Open Circuit TV that is on right now. They are watching some sort of mindless, cheesy melodrama with costumed-typed heroes. The green hero in the TV show says, "No way, you had an abortion without telling me?" The other scantily clad woman actress says, "We'd only been dating for 6 months. What was I supposed to do?" The man in the green hero costume replies, "You were supposed to be honest with me." Meanwhile, an audience member is heckling, saying, "Kill her off already!" Marko, he removes his VR helmet and is talking with Alana about the possibility of her pursuing this. Marko thinks it's a great idea. Alana, though, she doesn't think she would be a good enough actress to get the role, but Marko thinks she should at least audition. Alana says, "Marko, I want to find a paying gig as much as you, but I can't show my face in front of an intergalactic audience." Marko replies, "Good things troopers all wear masks." Alana further explains, probably because so many of them have shady pasts. The circuit may be legal to watch, but it's still a pirate network run by crooks and carnies. You really want to raise Hazel around these kind of people? Marko answers, "Better actors than soldiers." Back over to the crashed planet where the Will's ship is. Gwendolyn tastes fruit from the garden and begins hallucinating. She sees an old lover of hers named Valor. Gwendolyn knows that something is weird, so she decides to do a test and make a statement and see if Lion Cat calls her out. Gwendolyn says, "Cat, the person who took my virginity is standing before me right now." Lion Cat is confused and says, "Lying?" Gwendolyn knows that she's hallucinating now, so she begins vomiting out and purges the fruit she just ate. She then starts running, trying to find the Will and Sophie and make sure they are not hallucinating either. Gwendolyn finally manages to catch up with them, but she's a little bit too late, and she sees that Sophie has just stabbed the Will and was trying to finish killing him off. Gwendolyn grabs Sophie and ties her up. She then looks at the Will's wounds, and she tells Lying Cat that they need to rush to Quietus to see her ex, Marko, as he will know a spell powerful enough to heal the Will's injuries. Back on Quietus, D. Oswald Heist comes running downstairs in a panic. He tells them he spots someone approaching the lighthouse. Off in the distance, we see Prince Robot has finally arrived and is walking towards the house. Also, further in the distance, Gwendolyn is there as well. She has arrived on Quietus too, and she is watching Prince Robot approach the house. She is for now just assessing the situation. And with that, we are now basically caught up to where we were at the end of Volume 2, where Prince Robot was interrogating D. Oswald Heist, and Marko, Alana, Hazel, and Clara, and the ghost Isabel were hiding upstairs. Issue 17. Journalists Upshur and Doff are in bed discussing Alana and Marko and their various theories. They believe Alana and Marko went to Quietus as they know how influential this D. Oswald Heist book was on their love. All of a sudden, in their bedroom, is a big fluffy dog named Sweet Boy that looks like a St. Bernard with red and black markings similar to a panda bear. Sweet Boy shoots some darts from its nose. The darts are filled with a type of special potion. Upshur and Doff in bed get struck with those darts. Then a light switch flips on in their bedroom, and sitting on a chair is the freelancer agent named The Brand, which was hired by Special Agent Gale to silence the journalists. Just like the Will works with an animal sidekick in the form of Lying Cat, The Brand also works with an animal sidekick. Hers is a dog named Sweet Boy. The Brand tells the journalists they have been injected with something called Embargon, which I believe is named after the word embargo. The Brand explains to them that if the journalist mention a word of this Alana and Marko story to anyone, they'll die from the poison in the darts. Upshur and Doff ask why are they being spared at all, and the Brand says the two of them don't deserve to die, and she appreciates some of the stories they wrote in support of her union during their last strike, so she's sparing their lives. They can continue reporting on whatever other story they want, just not this story. The Brand then uses a wreath crash helm and teleports away with her dog. In the attic of D. Oswald Heist's lighthouse, Clara is ready to storm downstairs and save her new love Oswald from Prince Robot. But Marko and Alana beg Clara to think about the family and to stay hidden. In the bathroom of the Will's ship, Sophie is no longer hallucinating, and she apologizes to the Will for stabbing him. The Will tells her that it's not her fault, as he closes his eyes due to the blood loss. Alana and Marko continue arguing about what they should do, and eventually they realize that Clara is missing. Downstairs, D. Oswald Heist and Prince Robot IV are talking. This is in continuation of the conversations they were having at the end of Volume 2. They discuss Oswald's newest book called The Opposite of War. Prince Robot asks, is this another overlong book about pacifism? Oswald complains, why does everyone think the opposite of war is peace? Peace is just a lull in the action. Prince Robot asks, so what is the opposite of war then? Oswald tells him to read the book himself. Prince Robot points his blaster at Oswald and then says, I'll settle for a summary, thanks. Oswald asks Prince Robot to think about when he was on the battlefield. Think about a near-death experience he may have had. What did he see? What flashed before his eyes? Was it a white light, his loved ones? Prince Robot thinks about it, and it was nothing like that. He recalls thinking about sexual things and an orgy. That is actually along the lines of the answer Oswald expected. Oswald claims the opposite of war is sex. Peace is just a lull in the battle. Now, what exactly is the message behind that statement that the opposite of war is sex? I read an interpretation of Saga issue 17, and the interpretation of this opposite of war is sex statement. So on the website Bleeding Cool, which I will link to in the description, when they analyze this statement and what they think Brian K. Vaughan is trying to get across, they argue that war is about inflicting pain, and you do so for homeland, family, or even a way of life. These motivations exist as justifications for war, but war does not bring about democracy, freedom, or independence by itself. These noble endeavors come only after the fighting is done and the pain has stopped. The purpose of war, then, truly seems to beat an opponent into submission, to destroy. Peace is just the lull in battle, not the opposite of war. But sex is about inflicting pleasure on oneself or another, or several others. Sex can also lead to creation. Creation is a noble endeavor, but it only comes after the sex is done and the pleasure is stopped. Anyway, enough analysis of this statement. I just thought it was interesting to dive into a bit. Clara. She suddenly appears downstairs and threatens Prince Robot to stop hurting Oswald, and she calls him a drone. Prince Robot retaliates and shoots at Clara and knocks her back. Oswald yells, "Clara!" and he points his gun at Prince Robot and shoots him, revealing to Prince Robot finally that the gun actually wasn't a fake. Oswald, in the heat of the moment, resorted to violence, breaking his pacifism. Oswald rushes to Clara to find out that luckily most of the blast was absorbed by her axe. Clara warns Oswald that the robot won't stay down for long. Oswald is thrilled, though, that she is still alive. Gwendolyn. She was outside surveying the lighthouse from a distance, plotting her next move. She watched Prince Robot go inside the lighthouse, and then she eventually heard gunfire and fighting, so she began rushing over. She bursts right now into the room of the lighthouse with Lion Cat, and Oswald turns and faces her, holding his gun. Gwendolyn, reacting fast, perceives this as a threat, and she stabs Oswald through the head with the Will's lance weapon. The Oswald heist is dead. Gwendolyn realizes the mistake that she made, and she starts cursing. And while all this is happening, we see Prince Robot's systems start restarting. Issue 18, the final issue in Volume 3. Lion Cat jumps on top of Clara. Clara manages to stab Lion Cat in the eye with her finger. The ghost Isabel appears and tells Lion Cat to stand down, as it was against the rules of Lion Cats to do what she is doing, and that she and Gwendolyn have no right to execute civilians in their home. Isabel then uses her illusion ability to scare Lion Cat out of the Oswald heist's home. Isabel does not notice that Prince Robot IV has regained consciousness behind her. On top of the rooftop of the lighthouse, Alana and Marko try to decide what to do next, and if they should jump off this roof. Alana reminds Marko that her wings are vestigial and don't work. Marko tells her she has to be strong now. Gwendolyn arrives onto the rooftop. Gwendolyn, rather than talk about her personal issues with Marko, she instead turns the conversation to how she can treat the whale's injuries. She asks, if an adult male receives a traumatic wound to his jugular, what ingredients do I need for a long-term healing spell? Marko, a little taken aback, says, what? Gwendolyn replies, you're not the only one who's found someone new, alright? The man I love has been hurt, and I need your help to make him whole again. So Gwendolyn just admitting that she has fallen in love with the Will in their short time together. Marko explains that Gwendolyn needs snow, and then she has to tell her boyfriend to hold a specific image in his mind when she does the spell. Gwendolyn asks what kind of image. Marko says it depends on what area of Wreath he is from, the north or the south. Gwendolyn admits, though, that he is a foreigner, not from Wreath. Marko says, oh, I'm sorry. The spell only works on our kind. While they are talking up on the rooftop, a fire has been ignited downstairs, and it is revealed that Prince Robot's mind has been rebooted. He seems to have little memory of his past, and he just asks Isabel for commands in a very kind of robotic way. He says, Coalition forces of landfall, How may I assist your unit or division? Isabel, thinking, kind of perceiving that Prince Robot isn't himself, she decides to try and order him to pick up and bring the unconscious Clara woman outside. Prince Robot IV complies with the orders like a mindless robot. Once they are outside, Isabel wants to see if she can get him to do a few other tasks. Prince Robot IV, before complying though, says he wants to know Isabel's name and rank, and he's going to go back to his ship to confirm. Isabel, worried Prince Robot may not be able to be tricked anymore into helping her, decides to let Prince Robot go on about his business. She says, "Actually, why don't you get wherever it is you're trying to go? We'll take it from here, thanks." Prince Robot walks away. Back on the rooftop of the lighthouse, Alana attempts to tell Gwendolyn about a nearby hospital on landfall which can treat the will. The two women, though, end up in an argument over Marko, and Gwendolyn uses the will's lance to attempt to kill Alana. Marko, he pushes Alana and Hazel off the roof in an attempt to save them. This shocks Gwendolyn, though. She says, You killed them." Marko begins telling Gwendolyn the reason for their breakup. He says, "I had my problems. I was angry, insecure, selfish, but then I met her. I'm sorry, truly. Whatever you need to do to make this right, you should do it." Gwendolyn cuts him off and tells him that he broke her heart. Alana suddenly appears. She is using her wings to fly. She flies back up over the lighthouse and she shoots Gwendolyn with the Heartbreaker stun gun she has and manages to knock her out. Alana asks Marko how he knew that she would be able to fly. Marko replies, "'Cause my wife can do anything." Elsewhere, on the planet Jetsam, Upshur and Doff talk to their chief at the newspaper. The chief wants them to work on a story about Prince Robot, who has been missing for weeks and is about to have his first baby with his wife. Upshur and Doff, they make up a reason and turn down the story. The chief says whatever and he leaves. The two journalists don't want to take on the Prince Robot story because they still have that embargon poison from the brand in their systems, and they don't want to risk dying over it if they say the wrong thing in their article. In a hospital on landfall, the will lies in a semi-conscious state in an intensive care unit. The brand visits the hospital and asks to see the will. The brand informs the hospital staff that she is his sister. She is allowed in to see him. Upon the brand's arrival, the will utters the name Sophie. We know Sophie as the name the will gave to Slave Girl. The brand, she replies, "Very good, Billy, this is Sophie. I'm here now, okay?" So it was just revealed that the will's real name is Billy, and the will's sister, the brand, her real name is Sophie. And when the will was coming up for a new name for Slave Girl, he chose the name of his sister. Gwendolyn, she is the one that brought the will here to landfall to try and get him medical help. Of course, Gwendolyn, being from Wreath and having horns on her head, is an enemy of landfall, so she can't be with the will in the hospital and can't show herself here. So she is just watching the will from a distance, along with Slave Girl Sophie and Lion Cat. Elsewhere, a few months later, Alana and her family have moved forward in their lives and left the planet Quietus and traveled to the planet Gardenia. And we see Hazel is older now and has begun walking. And that is the end of Volume 3. Alright, so that was Volume 3, and I thought this was a great volume. I thought it was really fun. I liked a lot of the new characters we were introduced to, like the Brand, who we found out was actually the sister of the Will. I also liked that the Brand had a animal sidekick, much like the Will. She has this dog named Sweet Boy that fires poison darts from his nose, which is pretty fun. I also liked the journalists Upshur and Doff. I think they were a nice addition to the story. I liked the furthering of the Will and Gwendolyn's relationship. Also, Sophie, Slave Girl, and her story arc developing there, I thought was good. I liked the scenes on Quietus between Alana and Marco and Clara and D. Oswald Heist. Seeing them all hang out and have fun was great. And then the kind of more epic confrontation we get in the end when Prince Robot arrives and seeing some of that go down was really great stuff. This volume really progressed the story. When it finally ends, a lot of our characters are going to be in different places going forward. So all in all, I thought this was a pretty good volume. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back next week with more Saga.